Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. Fresno, the heart of the Central Valley, the heart of the state of California. You know, got a whole lot of heart going on here. Welcome to the show this week. I hope that you welcomed the day this day when you first were becoming conscious that you were gifted with another day to experience and express life in this thing we call life, and how incredible it is. And I'm glad to be back. We took a week off last week, but we're back, and we're moving into Chapter 10 in The Art of Life, where previously it was entitled This Thing Called Life, by Dr. Ernest Holmes. In this chapter, one of the things he addresses, and I'm going to get into it, is this concept of fear. And Holmes had a very interesting way of juxtaposing fear and faith, and we're gonna take a look at that also. But before we do, I want to touch on something in the textbook which may seem a little out of sync with where we're at, but in reality, it's something that we really need to kind of focus on as we go through today's study. And on page 445 in the textbook, under the title, The Need of Spiritual Experience, Dr. Holmes writes, he says, "We need spiritual experience, a first-hand knowledge of life and reality. There is no medium between God and man, nothing between life and living, between heaven and hell, but an idea. But an idea has no real value until it becomes an experience. In conversation, we assume great knowledge of religion and philosophy, but how much do we really experience?" he asks. "We can know only that which we experience. All great religions have taught truth, but it means nothing to us unless it becomes our truth. We need spiritual experience. We shall never know peace until we embody it. We shall never know truth until we become truth. And we cannot know God unless we sense God within our own being. The Spirit is ever giving, but we must take what life does for us, it must do through us." And that kind of sets the mindset, if you will, as we go into today, and we look at this concept of fear, and then we're going to look at faith at the same time, and we'll cover some other things. But when Dr. Holmes was writing, and he wrote this book back in 1948, we believed at that time, humanity, science believed, that a child was born with basically two fears, a fear of falling and a fear of loud noises. And everything else was a learned response. That was the idea, and it stayed pretty solid as the teaching and the idea going into the 1980s and maybe even beyond that. But with the advent of the functional MRI, science ability to look into the brain and actually see how the brain, what they call organelles within the brain, different aspects of the brain, different parts of the brain, how they actually functioned. There were some things that we knew, and there was a lot that we didn't know. But we've learned a whole lot since the 1980s. And one of the things we've learned a whole lot about is this thing called fear. Fear is an amazing thing. Evolutionarily, it is what preserved our ancestors so that they could live to fight or experience and express another day, if you will. And it was a very powerful evolutionary tool. But through all of the history of humanity, from our awakening of our self-awareness, what Holmes liked to call the I am moment. And he said from that point on that consciousness would be where our evolution would more or less take place, that we would no longer be subject to the vagaries of the external physical reality. And to a great extent, that's true. And we've talked about, and we will continue to talk about through the rest of this year, some ideas of how humanity has evolved in consciousness to become the incredible, but yet still relatively birthing new being in this thing we call life that we are. Fear, man. So what we found was that fear is our first responder to most everything in life. It's like the brain, the mind is hardwired for the status quo, if you will. Where everything is in order in our world in a way that we're comfortable with. But the mind is also very hyperly geared to what science calls the novel, or what we can call the new. And new is anything different, anything unexpected, anything unplanned for. Now, that can be in both a mental, psycho-emotional newness, or it can be in a physical newness, or a combination of both. But most specifically, if it's in the physical part, but it can be in the mind too, in the psycho-emotional part. But in the physical part, it's amazing. Our eyes are hardwired almost directly into the fear mechanism. It's like there's only 3 neurons, and in the nervous system, that's highly unusual. But what happens is the eyes see things before the mind, the brain, sees things, if you will, because this fear mechanism, there's like only 3 neurons. It's from the eyes into the fear mechanism, the amygdala, the hippocampus, stuff like that, and then from there it goes out and into the spinal cord and into the reactive part. Those things that we need to move, our muscles and reflexes and stuff like that. So we move before we think about what it is that makes us move. And one of the greatest examples of this in a non-threatening environment, if you will, is when you happen to be like at home or in an environment where you're very comfortable, and you walk around the corner and a friend or family member that you haven't seen in many years, someone that's near and dear to you that you weren't expecting to show up in your life, they jump out from around the corner and they go, boo, or gotcha, or something like that. Before you can even think, it's like you jump out of your skin, okay? That's that fear response. And then a fraction of a second later, we're all about slapping them upside the head, or, yelling at them, why'd you do that? I could have had a heart attack and all this other stuff. And then in the next second, we're giving them a big hug and tell them how they were missed and on and on. But that first initial response, that when we jump, that's that fear response, and it's powerful. And essentially, it's something that we don't have basic control over. That's a little bit different than what Dr. Holmes understood fear to be. However, in his understanding, what he did understand and the way he applied his understanding is still valid today as we see how to address this within our own life. And the thing about fear, and we're going to get into this, fear, besides being a reflex, fear is also an psycho-emotional belief, if you will, that we can hold. And it's more destructive in that way. And this is something that we've known for a long time, that, fear held over a period of time, we can call it anxiety, if you will, is devastating to the body. It ages us, it causes chemicals to be released inside the body that are essentially poison, and if this happens over a longer period of time, it can cause all sorts of disease-type conditions and things that are basically not good for us. So that's the fear thing. Now, the good news is, besides the fact that since the 1980s, how neuroscience has discovered how this mechanism works and what it is, we've also discovered since then that there are ways to mitigate its role in our life. And going back to Dr. Holmes, something that he knew intuitively back as he was putting together the principles of science and mind and spirit, is there are tools that we use that basically can shift us out of the long-term fear-based anxiety complex that is so damaging to the body and that has such a powerful destructive pull and imprisonment, if you will, on our mind, that how we can free ourselves from it in an incredible way so that we can live life at a much higher degree of livingness in an abundance of God's goodness. So we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to start talking about this.
Hi everyone, I am Sparkle Sujan with the Everything Sparkle Show. Tune in every Thursday live at 4 p.m. You will see people that are motivational, inspirational, inspiring, and of course, entertaining. We have a great time. We learn things about how big celebrities are inspiring big names here in Fresno. Hugh Hefner is the reason we have Fresno Magazine, and Gnarly Charlie got his start because Johnny Carson told him to. So, tune in, you'll learn something new, and have a good time.
Visit the beautiful city of Exeter and visit ExeterChamber.com. The Chamber's mission is to promote, support, and enable Exeter to prosper, creating a strong local economy, promoting community, and providing networking opportunities. Follow the Chamber on Facebook and Twitter, or give the Chamber a call at 559-592-2919. Call PG's Catering for all your special occasions. Available to cook any variety of foods and desserts that will leave your taste buds wanting more. Call 559-558-2682 and follow Peaches on Instagram and Facebook.
Is everything in life draining you? Come to Stretch 360. Our professional staff can offer you many options for relaxation like deep tissue or hot stone massages, infrared medical grade sauna. Once you leave us, you'll look and feel like $1,000,000. Stretch 360. Relaxation is only a stretch away.
Call Nicole Hamilton McManus at 559-917-3040 to buy this perfect, romantic, rustic ranch with a 2-home setup. Located only 12 miles from the entrance to Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Parks. This beautifully maintained property boasts of amenities and custom features. The main home is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,670 square feet. The guest home is 2 bedrooms, 1 bath with 1,163 square feet. Also features a 75-foot lap pool, a cabana, a beautiful garden, and 2 small nearby ponds. Call Nicole Hamilton McManus at 559-917-3040. The Art of Becoming Who We Are in Christ by Jolene Kennedy is a book about the process of maturity as we find our true identity, since God's promises must be received, embraced, and activated within us. Get your copy today and check out JoleneKennedy.com. Fleet Feet Fresno is more than just a running and sportswear store. Fleet Feet Sports' mission is to provide runners and other active Fresnans with gear that fits their individual needs, training that helps them reach their fitness goals, and races that satisfy their competitive spirit. Get to know Fleet Feet Fresno today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. So, fear. First, I'm going to go to the textbook, and I'm going to read in the glossary. Holmes writes, he says, under fear, perfect love casts out fear. Fear not, little flock, it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Those were in quotes. And now then Holmes goes on to say, fear is the antithesis of faith. It is the negation of confidence. Like faith, fear may be conscious or subjective, and if it is to be eliminated, it must be removed both consciously and subjectively. And there's a lot that we can do to eliminate the power, the effect, and the creativeness, if you will, that fear has a tendency to express in our life. So, Going back to the little book we're reading now, Holmes says, did you ever read a little article called The Scent of Fear? In it, the author says that animals will attack us only when we are afraid of them. Fear exudes a subtle scent which the animal smells. This arouses a corresponding fear in the animal, and then the animal attacks for self-protection. He says, I have known persons who could walk through swarms of bees and never be stung because they had no fear. I have a friend who had no fear of snakes, and he sat on a rock under which a rattlesnake was coiled while he drew up some plans. He says, the person who fears life gets but little pleasure from living. And we're going to stop right there. We talk about the idea that there's one life. And I've kind of expounded on that in the past, and we'll touch on it again, I'm sure, in future shows. But to be afraid of that which lives, exists, is the core of our individual beingness, this thing called life. You know, we talk about that we are not only surrounded by, immersed in, but we are also an expression of the divine, of God, of first cause, of principle. And that energy that exists and breathes through us, that thinks through us, that speaks through us, is this life energy. And yet, to think that there are people that live in some level of fear, you know, it's like, where do you turn? What do you do? Life's got to be almost, maybe even to the point of being unbearable. And yet, that's not our purpose for being here. Our purpose is not to live life in fear, or not to live life that's unbearable, but to live life and to live it at ever higher, greater degrees of livingness. So, you know, addressing this thing called fear could probably be an important thing, I would think. So I want to go, if you happen to have a copy of Living the Science of Mind, I found this years ago, one of the many times I read through this book, but I'll go back to it not infrequently. You'll find it on page 334. And Holmes, he starts off, he says, fear and faith are identical mental attitudes. Now, by this time, we're talking about fear as a state of consciousness, okay? He says, the energy used in one is the same energy that is used in the other. Since there is but one final energy in the universe, and this final energy is the energy of spirit, fear is a positive acceptance that we shall experience that which we dislike. Fill in for the word dislike anything you want. It is a positive acceptance that we shall experience whatever it is we don't want to, no matter how big that boogeyman may be, or that monster in the closet, or that thought in the back of our mind, or that impending piece of mail that's going to show up the house, or okay? We have positively in our consciousness accepted that that's the reality we're going to be faced with. He says faith is a positive acceptance that we shall experience that which we do like. Think about it. It's a very simplistic way. I mean, there are all sorts of, ways to look at faith. The biblical way. Faith is the the essence of things hoped for, the substance of things not seen, or something pretty close to that. There's all sorts of dictionary types. Psychology's got a whole, books written on fear, but, breaking it down very simply to the idea that fear is the positive acceptance that we're going to be faced with something that we don't like, versus faith, which is positive acceptance that what we want, what we like is going to show up. Very simple, but yet very profound in so many ways. So, what are we going to do? Fear is that big limiting factor in life. If you believe that thought is creative, and I do, then think about the positive creation of that which we fear expressing in our life versus the positive creation of transcending, moving beyond, not experiencing that which we dislike. So how do we get there? How does this unfold? I like to go back to Reverend Johnny Coleman's expression that she used, and it was, "You have a bigger God." That's a pretty good place to start. I have a bigger God. Now, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to believe it. It's another thing to embody it. And we can do that. But the doing, it doesn't happen just because we say so. It doesn't happen because you're watching this video. It doesn't happen because you read it in a book. It happens because you take conscious action in changing the way that you meet your day, your reality, and the habitual way that your mind runs to thought through the day, the trend of thought. It's amazing, this power that we have. But it's also amazing how so many people either are unaware of this power, turn their back on this power, or don't even believe in it. Well, I don't believe in it. That's just not so. So Holmes says, the person who fears life gets but little pleasure from living. The antidote to fear is faith. The man with great faith has no fear. Faith is a mental attitude, and hence it can be cultivated. And it's true. Faith is a mental attitude. Faith is in this sense, it's a habitual way of thinking, but one of the great things to understand about faith is you can't get any more than what you got. So you say, well, I don't have a lot of faith. Oh, you do. You've just misdirected it. And so in our journey as New Thought practitioners, religious science practitioners, I'm speaking of individuals, we start with the realization that we got all the faith that we need. We just got to redirect it. That faith in things that we dislike happen. Well, we're gonna change that. We're gonna change the way our mind and our brain puts together thoughts habitually. And as we address this, as we do this, not only are we going to change the way we think consciously, but we're going to profoundly rearrange how we think on a subjective state of consciousness, state of mind. There are so many things that we teach as spiritual tools in religious science, and affirmations is one of them. And, I've heard people over the years say, well, affirmations, or affirmations. The thing about an affirmation is it only does you as much good as the good that you put into it. And, you can have 1,000 different affirmations, but I would suggest that you pick one or two and you continuously affirm those until you begin to see the fruits of your affirming display within your way of thinking. You can affirm your way out of depression, believe it or not. You can affirm your way out of fear. You can affirm your way out of limitation in your life. You can affirm your way out of loneliness. But the thing is, you have to commit to it. You have to practice it. That's it. You have to commit and you have to practice. But you got to do it continuously. And whenever thoughts may percolate up in your mind that are in opposition to what you're affirming, you need to consciously address those thoughts. I like the way Dr. Holmes approaches this idea, when he talks about, denial or, telling this thought that it has no power, however it is that works for you, when you, and this is one of the great things about when we begin to practice and commit to a particular affirmation, you may not think about the thoughts that pop up in your mind as you go through the day when you're not paying attention to it. But as you begin to affirm a particular thing in your mind, when opposing thoughts pop up, the mind all of a sudden begins to trigger on them. And, there's like a little notification, kind of like, when you get a text message on your cell phone, it's something goes off and you go, oh, wait a second. No, I'm not going to, I'm not going to accept that anymore. I'm not going to accept that. It has no power. It does not belong in my way of thinking. However it is that you want to address that. And in the Science of Mind textbook and in many other New Thought books, and if you happen to go to a religious science center, or you take the Science of Mind magazine, or however it is that you participate in, and I encourage you to participate on an ongoing basis in your spiritual journey with like-minded people that are able to give you feedback, maybe give you, to help educate you, maybe share books or give you ideas to read, share experiences with you. Because as you heard the old saying, birds of a feather flock together. It's more than that. When we begin to associate with individuals, our thoughts begin to kind of flow in similar patterns. We support each other, like I say, classes and so on. And then when we get caught off guard, and truth be told, we all do, life comes at us at the speed of light for sure. But when we get caught off guard, we're never alone when we understand that the divine, that God is always with us. But sometimes, particularly when we're new to New Thought and religious science, and in particular, that we may feel like we're alone, but we're not. God's always there, no matter where we're at. But in the meantime, while we're building our inner spiritual muscle, if you will, having somebody with you that you can bounce thoughts and feelings off of can be very comforting. It can be very self-assuring, and it will help build our confidence. And as we build our confidence in the realization of the truth, which is we have a bigger God, we build the faith that we've previously allowed to be expressed in many other parts of our brain, our mind, in many different ways. We build the focus to bring it here, and the idea is to focus it down so that it's not diluted all over the place and it's working for us. We're going to take our next break, and I'll pick this up when we come back.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
Ghost Golf is Fresno's most spectacular family entertainment center. It's frightening how much fun you'll have on our 18-hole indoor haunted graveyard course. Skeletons welcome you, but watch out! All sorts of creatures may come to life. Ghost Golf is perfect for scary good parties, so book yours today. You'll get free plays at the Mummy Shooting Gallery, arcades, and air hockey. Check out our party and weekday specials online and like us on Facebook. Come play at family-friendly Ghost Golf. Good times will haunt you.
At McDermott Counseling, you will receive the highest level of care and a welcoming, safe space in which to discuss your most personal issues. Our therapists go above and beyond for you. Call 559-280-5756 or visit McDermottCounseling.com to find a caring therapist who best suits your needs. Diane Ainsworth's books of poetry and scriptures are available at CondioPress.com and as ebooks at Amazon.com. Diane hopes the words in her books will convey the unconditional love Jesus has for you. Learn more at God'sInspirationsBlog.wordpress.com and get a copy of Diane's books today.
Hello everyone, my name is Miss G. I offer fun and affordable promotion and advertisement on my talk show. It is called Fresno Vibes. We talk, we play awesome music. I also feature a bunch of different bartenders from different places. I like to have restaurants. I like to have any event, any kind of fun stuff. Contact me at rmgmissg@gmail.com and we will have so much fun and we will promote your business, promote your event right here on my show. So contact me. We'll have fun. Thank you.
Hi, I'm the host of New Thought Talk, Reverend Steve Walling, and I want to take a moment today and give you an opportunity to support our ministry, support our show. You can do that through a PayPal payment. You send the payment through PayPal to the email address of Madera, MADERASAC @gmail.com. If you don't have a PayPal account, you can go down below the link and you can find where you can enter a debit or credit card. I want to thank those that have supported us and those that will continue to support us. You have a great day. Bye. Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center, located in Fresno, California. Okay, this idea, fear, faith, etc. Holmes goes on, he says, the body is an instrument of spirit, an avenue for its self-expression, Our life, this one life we express, is God's Spirit expressing through us. He says the body is a temple of God. With this realization, fear and pain, as he's addressing in this part of this chapter, will disappear. So we can address these things in our mind, and we can address them in confidence. But the demonstration, to a great extent, is going to depend upon the practice that we've put into our spiritual journey, if you will. You know, Ernest Holmes called this the science of mind and spirit. And as a science, like any other science, it was something to be, there were tools to be learned, and when we learned what those tools were and we put them into practice in our life, what any one individual could do and demonstrate, so could anyone else that learned those tools and put them into practice. And one of the things about these tools and putting them into practice is they're not occasional. It's not like that bottle of aspirin that's in your medicine cabinet or whatever. Our journey as spiritual beings in this thing that we call life, that we experience, is to live life at a greater and higher degree of livingness, and we do this through growing ourself from within, growing our consciousness, in our recognition of this, what Troward called the absolute. We live life, experience life in the relative, which is the world of conditions and effects, but there is the absolute, which is the divine and the divine perfection in all of its universality, if you will. The greater degree that we become aware of that and that we begin to move in conscience in that way, the greater the degree of an increased livingness that we experience in our life. Confidence, Holmes writes, he says, confidence and love alone cast out fear. Now, how do we get confidence? You remember at the beginning, I read you out of the Science of Mind where Holmes says we need spiritual experience. Well, when we begin to put spiritual tools into daily practice in our life, again, it's not that, well, when I need it, I'll pull it off the shelf thing. It's actually realigning the way that we see, understand, and through that seeing and understanding in our expression of our life experience. I talked a while back on the concept that life is not meant to be addressed from a point of view that, like the Buddha had, that all life is suffering. Holmes, at the very beginning of the Science of Mind, he says, humanity, mankind has learned all that it needs to from suffering. We don't need to go there anymore. But we got to learn that we don't need to go there. And then we got to learn what the pathway, what the journey is, what the tools are that we use so that we're no longer there. And in that, we build confidence. We build faith. Now, we don't build more faith. We don't increase the amount of faith. We increase the vitality and the focus of faith. And that's the point about faith that I really want to make sure that I get across in today's show is faith is not something that we can add to as far as quantity. It's not like give me an extra pound of faith or a quart of faith or whatever. Like I say, we have all the faith that, we'll ever need, want, desire. But what we don't have is the focus of that faith and the vitality, or what you might call the confidence of that faith in what it is that we have faith in. Things that we're afraid of, we got pretty, all you have to do is, reflect back on that little scenario I ran by you in an earlier segment about, a friend or family member jumping out from around a corner, someone that you hadn't seen, someone that you're going to really want to spend a lot of time with, but that first fraction of a second when they do, and you jump back in fear response, okay? You can imagine, because we've all experienced it at some point, you can imagine what that feels like. It's a full body. It's an entirety. It's a mind. It's a body expression and demonstration, okay? That's fear. That's fear at a very vital, if you will, powerful level. The fear that we experience as our mind kind of runs away with us, of things that are going to show up on the calendar, or, what's the doctor going to say when I go? Those types of fears, we can begin to not only mitigate, but we can eliminate. And it's an amazing thing that in that elimination, all sorts of things take place in our life. All sorts of experiences that we might have been headed for are no longer on the horizon for us to have to deal with. Holmes believed that as we moved forward in our spiritual journey as a religious science practitioner, that we had a right to expect that we could speak our word, and we've spoken of that a little bit. We'll get into it in the future, just as we are praying in an affirmative way, and I'll leave it at that for right now, that there is a response that we call the law, and the law responds, and the law always responds, but the law responds at the level of our belief. That's what Jesus told us so many years ago, that it's done unto us as we believe. As you pray believing. There's a reason why he spoke the words that he spoke, and a lot of that reason may have gotten lost in the dustbin of history, so to speak, or misconstrued into other areas. But when we begin to put our daily spiritual practices into daily spiritual practice. We build our faith, we build our confidence, we build our belief, not in like I say, in quantity, but in intensity. And when you recognize that you have a bigger God, not as an intellectual recognition, but as a visceral, right down to the core, the center of your being, then we no longer allow what life is bringing at us to be the declarative aspect of how we're going to interact with life, how we're going to experience our day. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have issues to maybe meet and overcome. Sometimes we might get defeated, but you'll be more on the triumphant side the more that you put into practice tools that align you with principle. There's a power and a presence for good in the universe. It's available to each and every one of us when we first become aware that it's available. Okay? He says, we are immersed in a creative and living intelligence, the intelligence that creates and sustains the vast cosmic order, holding the planets in their appointed orbits, governing the wind and the wave. This intelligence is ours to use. Can you wrap your mind around what he's saying there? The power that holds the planets where they're at in the universe is available to us. It's ours to use, he says. We may use the power of the divine mind by consciously thinking it into manifestation. But it's not going to happen if we just, today, that's it, I'm going for it, and nothing happens. We got to build that muscle. Spirituality is a skill in so many aspects of how we bring it into demonstration in our life when we begin to understand that we have that connectedness with Spirit, that God is not capricious, that God's not a guy that's out there somewhere, that God is not waiting for us to 911 him so that he can tell us how good or bad we've been, but God is our co-pilot, co-expressor, co-experiencer in every moment of our life. This energy of spiritual power must be hooked up to conscious intention if our faith in it is going to become justified by actual objective results. Actual objective results. Not, well, gee, maybe that was an answer. When you begin to practice science of mind as a practice, religious science as a practice, new thought as a practice, you do so with an intention to see actual demonstration, actual manifestation. And you know what? You're going to have probably more than a few not working out for you types of things, okay? And we're going to talk about that, but we've got our last break coming up, and I don't want to interrupt it, so we're going to pick that up when we come back.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
Are you thinking of selling your home? Since 2004, the Souza Group, brokered by eXp Realty, has specialized in premier property listings and sales located in the Clovis Unified and North Fresno markets. The Souza Group will do their best to exceed your expectations. Visit clovisunifiedhomes.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. As we were going to the break, I started into this. There is, and if you've ever been subject to it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, or if you've seen it happen. You know, particularly with people that are new to New Thought or new to Science Mind. Maybe they're faced with some issue in their life that they seek a demonstration of God's good, God's abundance, a demonstration of the truth of who they are, and seemingly things don't quite work out the way that they had hoped. And oftentimes it really is founded in hope and not in belief. Sometimes, you know, and if you've seen this, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes individuals tend to be, or at least they feel that maybe they're being judged by others as falling short, if you will. They don't believe enough, or, you know, their belief's not real enough, or, you know, a sundry of things. And that's tragic, because if you start with the premise that you are the divine, that you are spirit, you are God demonstrating and expressing as you, there is no falling short. Yes, demonstration may not express the way you want, but maybe you're just not quite the master of where you want to be in your spiritual journey. And, you know, we don't get angry at a cross-country runner because they haven't completed the race only a quarter mile off the starting point. And, you know, we don't hold people responsible for not winning the game when, you know, the game's not over, so to speak. And I'm speaking somewhat metaphorically, but, you know, I think you can get the equivalence here. We come into this life as students of life itself. Our purpose is to learn more of the truth of who we are. We don't all start with exactly the same slate, if you will. I've often said we're all created equal, but we're not all born in equal circumstances, and that's true. And that's not it's not an out. It just means when we recognize the what is, you know, it's like if you have a destination you want to arrive at, and you pull out a map, you need to first identify where it is that you are on that map. And sometimes, you know, we get a little overzealous, or maybe we get a little overhyped, if you will. Or, you know, sometimes people want a little more mythology in their life than truth. And, you know, it's that someone that's going to, you know, pull the winning lotto ticket out of a hat or whatever. And it doesn't happen that way. We're intentioned to live life and to live it in a way that we grow in our livingness, and that's our purpose. And in potential, somehow God's Spirit has laid out for each and every one of us what it is that we could ever need, want, and desire in order to do that. but it's extremely specialized and unique, that is directly aligned with the gifts that God has created within us. We are each created individually. No two fingerprints alike, no two thoughts alike, no two anything alike. We are extremely individual, and so are the gifts that we have as we live this life. Part of our journey is in understanding the truth of who we are is understanding what our gifts are too, and in putting those gifts into play in our life experience. Some people do it very young, and some people don't. They get a little old before and there's nothing wrong with that. There is no such thing as a life ill-lived. It's just how much livingness that we have individually brought into this life. Of course, the premise is you gotta start with the understanding that we're infinite beings. It's not like, we began with our first breath and we end with the last sigh that this body gives up on this physical plane. Our purpose is to live life at a greater and higher degree of livingness while we're here, that we learn, that we embody, that we put into practice more, that we realize more of the truth of who we are. But it doesn't end here. I can't lay out specifically what happens beyond this physical expression that we call life. Dr. Holmes believed that the personality is what is that moves beyond. Some people refer to it as spirit, but whatever it is, it still is individually expressed as we are here now in this place and in time. When we move beyond this time and place to that which there is no space or time, but we're in the expression of the divine itself. It's infinite in all that means, which is more than I even can begin to wrap my mind around. But we are an expression of that infinite individualized. And we're given this life to do and to learn. And it's amazing as we begin to start our journey, and it is a journey. It's a journey we can start at any time. It starts with belief, it starts with faith, it starts with certain initial realizations and a knowingness, if you will. And that knowingness is that at the core, the center of our being, that when we quiet the mind and we open our hearts up within ourselves, that there is that which exists there that is so incredibly awesome, and it awaits our discovery of it, and then our connectedness with it. And that is that beginning, that spiritual experience that Dr. Holmes talked about. We, each and every one of us, in our own way, we need that experience, and it's available, and we can all have that experience. And to say it's all good is maybe a little trite, but it is. It's all good. So we covered a little bit of fear and faith today. The rest of this chapter, Dr. Holmes begins to address this thing called treatment, and we'll get into that next week. He says, just what is meant by your word. And if you're not familiar with it, figure it out. When you speak your word, what does that mean? When we come back next week, we'll talk about what it means to speak our word, how it was understood in times past and how it's understood today. And when we do speak our word, how do we want to speak it? What is our expectation when we do speak it? And the rest of it we can fill in next week when we come back for our next show. So I thank you for being with us today. I hope you've learned a few things. You can, again, Living the Science of Mind itself, The Art of Life, most any publication that Dr. Holmes has written. There are all sorts of resources online. And of course, if you happen to belong to, one of the organizations like CSL or UFBL or Unity or, Anton, whatever, there's a power and a presence for good in the universe that's available to each and every one of us. So as you go through the week, know the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, the presence of God, yeah, it watches over you, because no matter where you're at, God is there. And if God's there, all is well. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time when we come back.